right.
And just a few weeks ago, there was such a woman who went to be with Yeshua and went to be and receive her reward. And that was Mrs. Rosa Parks. See now, the way the devil works, I know the way he tries to knock on my door every once in a while. The way the devil works is we're going to have folks who are neither black or white, and they're going to say, well, what about Latino heroes? Or perhaps you come from a different race or a different nationality. Well, how come he never preached about Jewish folks like that? You see what I'm saying? That's just the way the enemy works.
Yes.
This is a very sensitive subject. Even if I'm going to do a lot of reading, it's really not going to be any less sensitive. But I believe that Hebrews chapter 11 is an ongoing, open-ended chapter, meaning Yahweh is still adding members to the Hall of Fame of faith. Turn to your neighbor and say, adding members.
Adding members.
Not members clothing. Has nothing to do with clothing. Adding members. I want to speak about a woman named Rosa Parks. Some of you have never heard of her. Some of you are very familiar with Rosa Parks. Others are nebulous. You don't know much or don't care much one way or another. Ephraim, Hebrews chapter 11. Again, this message, preaching until my chef tells me I have to come in, like a good little boy. The bus of justice, or the faith parts. Ephraim chapter 11, and let's pick it up here in verse number 31. Now let's go to 32. What more will he say? For the time would fail us. And it still fails because this is an open-ended chapter, still being written. To speak of Gideon and Barak and Shimshon and Yiftach, verse 32, of David and Shmuel and of the Nevi'im, who through emunah subdued malchutim, worked tzedakah, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in fight. Circle those words. Became valiant in fight. Routed the armies of foreigners. Women received their dead raised to Chaim again. Others tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they may obtain a better resurrection. Rosa Parks is known affectionately as the mother of the civil rights movement. I'm going to read, as I said, I'm going to read a lot of things here. But this woman belongs in the Hall of Fame of faith. You hear what I'm saying? Because in the South, in the 40s, 50s, way back, African Americans weren't allowed to sit on the front of the bus. Well, they could as well. It's in the middle as long as there weren't any white folks around. But as soon as a white person walked in, they had to get up, give up their seat, and move to the back of the bus. It's wrong, it was wrong, it is wrong, and it will be wrong, it will always be wrong. The framers of the Declaration of Independence said what? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, except when it comes to reality in the United States, especially in those days before the modern civil rights movement. One woman, no title, no elected office, no power, just a seamstress going to work, refusing to follow man's unjust laws because she answered to a higher law, the law of Jubilee and the law of the Torah, that all men not only are created equal, all men need to be set free if they're still in bondage and subservient to another human being. Hello? Any man or woman who is subservient to another human being is in bondage, and even the beautiful Torah set slaves free every 7 years. There was not that provision in the United States because they were separate but equal facilities, where segregation was the law of the land, and it was wrong. Hello? So I call this message the bus of justice. We know a lot of people have heard of Miss Rosa Parks. But very, very few people knew what powered her bold actions. So I'm going to do a lot of reading. I hope you're not bored, because this is not a boring subject. It is a healing balm that Yahweh visited on our nation through this one woman who was bold in faith, bold in stature, bold in fortitude, bold in vision. And then we're going to talk about from the Word the things we can learn as believers, the things that Rosa Parks accomplished, things that you and I can learn in our walk with Yahweh. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. I want to have a reputation, I believe you want to have a reputation that you love all people and you don't favor any peoples over anybody else, and because we are all Yahweh's children created in His image. Amen? And I live that in my ministry. People know that you can't fake that. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when I see people who can't walk in racial reconciliation. It breaks my heart. Because I had a man here, and I won't mention his name, and I thought I knew them, but I didn't. I just knew that there were members of his family that never wanted to come to our synagogue. And he was an African American. Matter of fact, I raised him up into leadership. Most of you don't know him. It's been some time. And he always would make excuses for why his family, but specifically his certain members of his family, would not come to the synagogue. There were all kinds of excuses. She's tired, or he's tired. Like a long story short, after about a few years, when I kept pressing him and Rivka said, "How come your family's not here? How come your wife's not here? How come they're not here? How come?" And she kept pressing him for these answers. And he'd be an African American, about my age, about 100 years old, and minus 60, I think, at that time, something like that. Minus 50. Nah, whatever. I don't want to get confused. I don't want to put myself in a hole that I can't get out of. And we finally sat at Denny's, and he explained to me, and I was shocked. I thought I knew this family. He said, my spouse and my family has a hard time with sitting under the ministry of a white person. I'm like, whoa. What? Don't you know I have a reputation as a lover of people of color? Me? Elders, worship leaders, I took that personally. That family, and finally after 3-4 years, the truth came out. They wouldn't come to the congregation because I was white. That bothers me. That still bothers me. Because I don't think there's room for that in the body of Yeshua. Anyway, so these things are still among us, in case you hadn't noticed. All right? And it works both ways. There are white folks who will not go to a congregation where the leadership is black. They'll work with them. They might even be stuck with them next door. But no, we want to continue segregation in our worship. We don't want segregation in the market. We don't want segregation in housing. We don't want segregation in our daily lives. But when it comes to worship, we got this one little cow that's still holy we're not willing to give up. And so as a black and as an African American family, we just can't, we don't feel safe and secure enough to sit under a white man's ministry, or white folks to sit under a black man's ministry. In this country, man, we have blown it big time. When it comes to race and to relations, we have blown it big time. And our nation we were exporting democracy, but we weren't really free here at home.
Oh man, tell it. Come on, doctor.
Many of our citizens had separate but equal facilities, but that's segregation, Jim Crow segregation as it existed in the South. That's dehumanizing. It says you're not good enough to sit next to me. You're not good enough to drink at the same water fountain. You're not good enough to eat at the same lunch counter. You're not good enough. That's the message. It doesn't matter if the facilities are equal. Segregation sends the message that you're just not good enough to be in their presence. So this woman, and the reason I read verse 35, Rosa Parks, I read this scripture. We'll talk more about scripture later after I finish reading. I'll be reading a lot, so I hope you stay with me. The word says that faithful men and women through the centuries receive their dead women. And I thought of Rosa Parks right there. Women receive their dead to life. That nation, African Americans in the United States, blacks, that nation was treated as second-class less than citizenship. And here was a woman who was motivated and fueled by faith in Yeshua, faith in the Bible, faith in the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua. And through her faith, one woman, without title, without position, without station in life, one woman who changed the nation and began the healing in our nation of where we had gone and we had not been living the way Yahweh desired for us to live. So in a sense, I saw her, and I saw her legacy as someone who brought her children back to life, and brought respect and decency, and where Americans of color can say, we're not just equal on paper, we're equal in the voting booth, we're equal at the lunch counter, we're equal in all walks and all aspects of life. This woman received her children back to life. And what the media doesn't tell you is, in other words, without Rosa Parks, as you're going to find out here, without Rosa Parks, there was no Dr. King. There was nobody named Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a product of Rosa Parks' ministry. And it was a ministry. This woman was not an elder. She was not a preacher. She was a plain, simple woman who feared Yahweh more than man and was willing to withstand evil and indignity or wrong and evil and confront it through civil, peaceful disobedience. Peaceful means, nonviolent struggle. Amen? Now, let me tell you a little bit about her. She died on Monday, October 24th, 2005, at her home in Detroit, Michigan. Rosa Parks was 92 years old. And very rarely do I speak about politics. I think the last time that what could be classified as political teaching or political speech was when Ronald Reagan died. Remember, we had a sermon and a service about Ronald Reagan. I don't care what color or what party they come from. When a man of faith or a woman of faith goes on to their reward and their life changes nations, societies, communities, we bring that to your attention. She was 92. Rosa Parks was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor that can be given to a civilian. Celebrated in 3 cities and her going to be with Yeshua: Alabama, Washington, and Detroit. Rosa Parks is the first woman, forget about African American or forget about woman of color. She is the first woman in American history to lie in honor in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. Think about that. No woman in the history of the United States has ever lain in state their body under the rotunda of the United States Capitol. Upon her passing, her body lay in state, as I mentioned, for the public to pay their respects. An honor normally reserved for presidents and Supreme Court justices. It was the first time a woman had laid in state in the Capitol Rotunda, but it was more impressive because Rosa Parks never held high government office. Yet, she may have done more to change America than many of the 30 others, all men, who had been so honored on 28 occasions before her. Does that blow your mind? Right? Before she could be laid to rest, a bill had been introduced in both houses of Congress to erect a monument to her in the Capitol Sanctuary Hall. Parks received the award because nearly half a century ago, in 1955, she changed the course of American history when she refused to give up her bus seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. Courage in the face of oppression. And remember, at that time, segregation was the law of the land. Remember that. Legally, you can segregate against minorities, especially African Americans. Courage in the face of oppression, resistance in the face of injustice. That is the enduring legacy of Rosa Parks, whose defiance on a racially segregated Montgomery, Alabama bus lit the flame of the modern civil rights movement and inspired freedom movements from South Africa to Poland. You get that? That one act of defiance by a simple, everyday, common woman filled with faith brought courage and boldness to rights movements, freedom movements around the world, as we're about to find out. Rosa Parks has been honored in songs, books, plays. She has had streets, museums, schools named after her, assuring that her contributions and place in human history will echo for generations. She was cited by presidents and foreign nations, testimonials to the kind of worldwide fame she could never have envisioned when she refused to move to another seat for a white passenger on December 1st, 1955. Under the segregation laws in force in Alabama at that time, the first 4 rows of a Metropolitan bus were reserved for whites, and the last 10 for blacks. The rows in the middle can be used, were able to be used by blacks, but must be vacated by them if a white man wants a seat. Some drivers also made blacks pay for a ticket at the front of the bus, then get off and reboard at the back of the bus. During the year, she was ejected from Montgomery Public Bus after a dispute with driver James F. Blake. Parks had refused to enter at the back of the bus because it was already full. In other words, she wasn't trying to change the nation and change the world. The bus was full. Make sense? Nowhere to sit down in the back. You enter the front. On December 1st, December 5th, 1955, on a bus trip home from her work as a seamstress at the Montgomery Fair department store, Parks refused to surrender her seat to a white man. Coincidentally, the driver of the bus is James F. Blake, the same driver who ordered her off the bus in 1943. I could not see how standing up was going to make it lighter for me, Parks later writes in the autobiography, Rosa Parks, My Story. The more we gave in and complied, the worse they treated us. Parks was not the first black person to refuse to move to the back of the bus. Earlier that year, a woman who had been carried off the bus, clawing and kicking. Another woman had used profanity during her arrest. But the local NAACP declined to rally behind these women. But Parks' behavior throughout her arrest was above reproach. Because of this, and because of her well-known exemplary character, Alabama civil rights leaders thought Parks' arrest signaled the right time to act. They launched the famous year-long Montgomery bus boycott, and the rest is now history. On November 13, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court found that Alabama's bus segregation laws were unconstitutional. The boycott ends on December 20th of 1956, and Rosa Parks subsequently becomes known as the mother of the civil rights movement. So when I read in Hebrews that mothers receive their children back from the dead, man, I'll tell you what, that fits Rosa Parks. Her children were dead while they lived. They had the indignity of being treated as less than humans, or second-class citizens. Some of you Ephraimites knows what that feels like. Some black Ephraimites knows twofold what it feels like to be rejected as a black person with full equal rights and also as an Ephraimite. In 1966, Rosa Parks was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. 3 years later, in June 1999, Rosa Parks received the Congressional Gold Medal before a crowd at the U.S. Capitol. 5 months later, in November, Parks was presented with the actual medallion for the Congressional Gold Medal at a star-studded celebration at Detroit's Orchestra Hall. Vice President Al Gore presented the medal at the sold-out tribute. In 1998, Parks received the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center's first International Freedom Conductor Award during ceremonies in Cincinnati. Parks' legacy also reaches to the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development, which she founded to make young people more aware of civil rights history. Those are the facts. Now, some of you may wonder, well, why are we focusing in on her? Because I believe she's one of the giants of the 20th century. She brought this nation to its senses and said, hey, what's going on may be legal, but it's wrong. You know, something could be legal and still be deadly wrong. She brought this nation to its senses, and she refused to give up her seat. And of course, as we're going to read here, there was a young minister by the name of Dr. King who rallied the folks in Alabama and began a year-long boycott of the buses there, which eventually led to the Supreme Court decision to overturn segregation. Amen? This was like 30, 40 years ago, whatever. It wasn't that long ago. What was that? The 60s. It wasn't that long ago. Mm-hmm. But what the media has not really told us, or hasn't focused enough, is where she got her strength. Her strength came from her faith in the Word and in Yahweh. Can you imagine not getting up? I mean, her family, as we're going to read here, was in danger for the next 15, 20 years. Nightly threats, nightly death threats. We're going to get you, we're going to kill you, we're going to lynch you. She used to sit with her grandfather and her husband at the front door waiting to get lynched, and she was going to go out shooting. She said, I'm just going to wait for that